And what I'm fascinated about, as relates to your story, is that you have almost, and I'm no expert on the business, right? So bear with me. But you've almost been in almost, as I see it, almost every part of this business, from casting, right, to representing clients, which we'll get to producing shows that millions of people watch, right, and movies. And all of that, the case that I'm making, all of that comes from this ability in your heart and your soul to weld together faith and entertainment, and not to see them as opposite. Because you and I, right. you seem like you grew up in the church, obviously.
Oh yeah.
And I'm a church boy, and you know, in certain traditions, you don't mix.
No.
You don't mix the world.
Especially my tradition. I'm Kojic.
Oh, the Grand Old.
Yeah, the Grand Old Church of God in Christ.
Because you can't join it.
Unless you've been born in it.
Now, for those of you who don't know what that is, Kojic is a sanctified holiness tradition where I think pantyhose might be a sin.
Yes. Yeah. Well, actually, without pantyhose is a sin.
That's the sin.
Right, that's the sin.
That's the sin.
Me in pants is the sin. But we have grown over the decades of the faith.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
And perhaps even more than that, that grounding, right?
Yeah.
Is where your ability to be at home in these two worlds come from.
Yes.
I'm so just tell me if I'm off. I'm so tired of people who think that they can only exist in one space. I one time I was my son's mom worked for PBS for a while, and she interviewed T.D. Jakes. Right after the interview, I had an opportunity to talk to him and meet him, and he didn't know me from Adam, but for whatever, he just felt like sharing his heart. And he said to me, he said, Doc, one of the things that annoys me about the church is that they lock me into being Bishop Jakes. And they don't realize that before I was Bishop Jakes, I was Thomas Dexter Jakes. He said, the hardest thing about religious people is that once they see you one way, they can't see you any other way.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. Has that been your experience?
Well, it started out being my experience. But, you know, being raised Kojic, when I felt like, I've always had that inkling or that proclivity to go into entertainment. But being raised in church, I was always nervous to cross over. So one day I knew that it was what I was supposed to be doing. So I went to my pastor at the time and I said, Pastor, is it a sin to cross over? And he said, no, it's not a sin to cross over as long as you take the cross over. And
okay.
Right. So
okay.
And so that's what I did. I was like, gotcha.
Yeah.
And that is what I will be doing. Now, it hasn't been easy.
Yeah.
When we did Preachers of LA, that was, you know, it started off a little bumpy because the church was like, what are you doing?
Right.
But it was the first time I was able to give a platform to the church in a way where you haven't seen before. And my intention was never to exploit or to expose. It was to show that men of the cloth are human beings and that they too have trials and triumphs and that they cry and they aspire. But we would never know because we're so busy holding them to this, you know, this rule that you cannot make a mistake. And so it celebrated a lot of the church. It celebrated a lot of different ways in which people pastor, but it was also an opportunity for me to show the church to Hollywood in a way to expose the body of Christ so that they see we can do great television too without being ratchet.
So that's good. That's good, Dr. Carter. That's good. But and I want to talk about the Preachers of LA. But before I do that, there's a whole generation watching and sitting out there right now who grew up watching the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, and you did casting for that show.
Yes.
And for Martin.
Yes.
Yeah, you did casting for that show. So talk to me about what it was like to be a part of these iconic television shows, you know, that at the time, I don't know if you knew what they were going to turn into.
No, I didn't. I worked with the queen of casting. Her name is Monica Swan. She, her brother was actually my pastor, Bishop Ron Gibson, at the time. But I learned everything from her. She was a very seasoned woman, and watching how she dealt with the producers and the talent, I just would sit back and glean. And my job was to bring the talent to the door, get them in there ready for the casting director, and then I was set back. But the great thing was building relationships with the talent and the producers, because I was aspiring even then. When I was a casting assistant, I was like, I want to do what you're doing. Or maybe I don't. Maybe I want to do something other than what you're doing. But at least I'm getting a chance to see how this all works and how it all works together. So being in the environment was aspirational for me. And it also taught me a lesson about gatekeepers. I was an assistant, and I have learned you must always respect the gatekeeper, because one year he's got the gate, he's guarding the gate, but next year he's gonna have the key. And if you disrespect him in that role, you ain't got nothing coming when he elevates. And so I've been always careful.
That's rich.
Yeah.
That's a very important point, because I think people, especially in LA,
yes,
people are so ambitious,
yes,
and so narcissistic.
That's right.
That they will run over you to get to their next opportunity, only to discover that when they get there, the person that they ran over is sitting behind the desk.
Right.
And
right.
you know what I'm saying? And
I guard relationships.
Say more about that.
In this business, there are two things that are incredibly important. One, the favor of God. Two, the relationships he gives you. And you can either destroy or cultivate relationships. And I have been, I have learned that people in your lives, they are either seasonal, reasonable, or they are sent there for one specific reason, and it is your responsibility to know what that reason is and who they are to your life. And for me, in the business, I'm like, this is a relationship that I need to manage and maintain. Right now is for a season. But when it becomes something else, God always reveals it to you. And I had the worst incident happen that was such a beautiful learning experience. At the time, I was doing The Gospel. That was my first movie that I'd ever done. Yeah. And I was working with Will Packer and his partner at the time. And we had just did The Gospel. It was, they were gonna do it as a direct-to-DVD movie. But it came out so amazing that they were like, oh my God, this is amazing. The people in the Sony offices, they're getting goosebumps, they're listening to the songs, they wanna know what this God thing is. And I was like, awesome, this is great. So the movie, we made it for $4 million, it made 17. And at the time, that was like unheard of. And they weren't doing gospel movies. So after the success of it, I take Will, and I'm like, now, that was a really great thing that we did. And so what we're gonna do now is we're gonna go to Amy Pascal. He was like, well, what about Clint? Clint? No, we've already did what we need to do with Clint. We're going to Amy. So he says, okay. So I pick up the phone and yes, this is Holly Carter, or Davis at the time, Holly Davis, and Will Packer and I, we just finished The Gospel. And so I want to set a time for Will to meet you. She was like, okay, we'll get back to you. By the time they got back to us, they sent us right back to Clint Culpepper. Clint Culpepper set Will down and he says, let me tell you something. She's not wise, because she was gonna jump over me to go to my boss when she should have came right to me. So I think you need to get rid of her. And guess what? He got rid of her. And when I tell you, that was probably one of the best lessons in relationship management that I could have ever learned. And so I pass that to everybody. Don't disrespect the relationship, certainly that got you to the point A.
Right. They got you in the door.
Got us in the door.
And now you just gonna act like they.
I don't know you. Please, honey, I done already made a movie that made made 17 million. I don't need you. All right.
But that's integrity, right?
Yes.
That's integrity. And
yes.
and most people don't have. Could you do me a favor? Could you move your
yes.
Because it's hitting the mic.
Oh, sure.
And they're yelling at me.
They're yelling. Okay.
So, but that's integrity, because at the end of the day, if you are not motivated by being a good person,
yeah.
then the pursuit of money
yes.
will take over everything.
Every time.
And I look, you and I just met, but I kind of feel like you're a kindred spirit. I can bet you all the money in both of our pockets. We both know people who destroyed their opportunities because they was greedy.
Yes, that's true.
Because they was greedy.
They were greedy.
And life was opening the door, and they wanted the whole house before they were ready.
That's very true. That's very true. I learned a valuable lesson. And now you talk to people about me regarding relationships, and the one thing they say is, she's a loyal person. She's a person that...
That's rich.
But I had to learn.
That's rich. That's rich.
I had to learn.
Is that a part of what you want? Because I want to go back to the television stuff. But is that a part of what you want your legacy to be?
Oh yeah, I want a part of my legacy is being able to inspire people to dig down, find their gift, stir it up, and then use it to impact culture so that it affects generations to rise up and do the same. Because I've been taught that, when we have to live out our destiny, because people are waiting for us to do that. And when we don't do it, we're leaving somebody in a state of, well, if she can't do that, then I can't do this. So I need to make sure that my job is right along with my daughter, right along with the girls that I mentor at my church, right along with those who work alongside me, and the 12 women that encircle me. My job is to inspire, to be inspired, and then at the end of the day, to at least leave a part of a legacy that helps people rise up and realize who they are in God first, and then in the earth.
That's rich. That's rich. That's rich. Yeah, that's good. That's good. So we have an audience member that wants to ask a question or make a comment. Introduce yourself and tell us what you want us to know.
How you doing? My name is Siobhan. I wanted to know, what was your main reasoning for telling these stories and trying to get to the mainstream, to get people to understand the message you were trying to convey?
I think the main reason why I tell the stories, you mean in television or now?
Just in general.
In general?
Either way you want to give it away.
I do it because I want others to be able to identify their purpose, and in doing so, again, impact others to, affect change in the earth. Because I feel like there's a scripture says that the whole world is yearning in anticipation for believers to rise up and do something that's going to impact culture, and that's my assignment.
It was interesting. Thank you. Thank you so much. Tell me, what kind of criticism did you get?
A lot.
When you what are some of the things people said about the projects, and maybe even about you, when they didn't realize you could wed these two things together? That's
not saved. That's you worldly. God ain't in that.
That's so churchy.
Yeah, darkness and light don't mix. That's the word, but not on this, because there was purpose.
Right.
And that you better watch, what you're doing, because I don't think you're being God-led. And so listen, I hear everything, but I don't act on it. Slow to speak, quick to hear, and prepared to respond when I need to.
That's wisdom. That's wisdom. I'm a firm believer, if you spend most of your life responding to what people say about you, you won't ever get around to actually living the life you're supposed to live.
That's good.
And you embody that in this sense, because your first major, because you moved from casting to representing talent and artists, and your first major, as I understand it, artist was Usher.
Yes.
Right. So you represented Usher, and tell me how that happened.
how it really happened was I wasn't married at the time, I was dating. And my husband, boyfriend then, said, you should really get him because he's gonna be a big star. And he was doing Make Me Wanna. And I was watching his video and he stepped out of them shoes. When he stepped out of them shoes on Make Me Wanna, I was like, he done made me wanna. Let me find him. Let me find where he is. So I picked up the phone and I called his mom, and who is now one of my best friends. And I appealed to her as at the time, single mom to single mom. Feel like I told her Usher had an ability. I felt like he can cross over into television and film, and if she would trust me, I would.
It's fine. They said it's fine.
Oh, okay. If she would trust me, I would work with her, and she didn't have to worry about anything because I was a legitimate and an integral woman. And 17 years later, or at this point, 26 years later, because we are all very close, and she's one of my best friends, and so we're still in business, in life, and in relationship together. But that was an interesting business because at the time, the bigger agencies didn't think I should have had him. So they went after him every which way but loose. But his mom is another woman that's very loyal and very strong. And so she was like, no, and didn't let it happen. And I was like, well, wait a minute, but we're gonna use their juice. I'll just make sure that I stay in the seat. And so that's what we did. But she was she was a strong fixture in our lives.